Hi, this is Kirby Summers, and I welcome you to my podcast. Today is March 9th, and I'm a little tentative because I just tested my mic, which has been giving me a problem. It just seems that whenever I'm working on a special project, that, there's some kind of, I'm going to call it interference. I don't care if that sounds paranoid. So, today I'm going to talk about the CIA's Project MK Ultra, otherwise known as mind control. And I'm going to include information that I have not included before. What I would ask you to do, I'm still not sure if I'm going to post this only on my Patreon, if I'm going to put it only on my Substack, if I'm going to do a combination of the two of the just named, or if I'm going to put it on my YouTube channel, because when I tweeted about something earlier, like an hour ago, I received a message telling me from Twitter that they had removed it for sensitive content. Um, hey, censorship, what can I say? So for if I'm on YouTube, which I don't know yet, or if I'm on a platform where it's like or subscribe, please like the video and please subscribe because that informs the interweb kind of fighters that this is something worth listening to. So please do that. That'll help me a lot. Meanwhile, I want to thank all of you who have been supportive of me. I'll tell you, I'm going to give you an update. I have been sick for 4 months. I got sick a little bit after Thanksgiving, and I have been really trudging through. I've had some days are better than others. I don't know what's going on. I'm hoping that whatever I have is resolved soon, but it hasn't slowed down my work because it's very important, I feel. I've gotten to this point and I feel that sharing whatever knowledge I have gained personally, whatever information I've been able to put together by, my sleuthing or other ways, my books, my podcasts, my newsletters, I feel that it is important to share information. So, for example, I want to talk about mind control, which existed long before MK Ultra. And I just want to preface this by stating that this is not a conspiracy theory. This is a real project. It was called MK Ultra by the CIA. And basically, you could Google it. It exists. You can even go to Wikipedia, which I never, never, never tell anyone to use because it's really full of garbage. But even Wikipedia will let you know that MK Ultra was a real thing and frankly continues to be a real thing. Mind control existed long before the CIA began to use it, let's say, in the CIA, which was only created in 1947. But mind control has been around for a long, long, long time. And even though the CIA, when caught in 1973 because of leaked documents given to Seymour Hersh, who then published an article in the New York Times, and frankly, it was a couple of articles, which led to the church committee hearings. And the CIA turned around and said, oh, we were doing that. They destroyed all the documents. We were doing that, but we're no longer doing that. Okay, well, MK Ultra was as new to me as it is to some of you for a long, long time. Right now, my computer is trying to decide. I hate to interrupt what I'm saying, but it's trying to decide whether to turn this whole thing off. And that's what it's done to me for about 2 hours. I've been trying to do this podcast. So, I'm going to take that as sort of a good sign. The more I share with you that maybe, other forces that watch us, because we now know through the work of Edward Snowden that the government spies on all of us, not just a select few, but all of us. They spy through the iPhone, they spy through the television, they spy through all kinds of things. They have access to our homes, they have even access to our thoughts, algorithms, artificial intelligence. So things happen, you know. I grew up believing that we lived in a place of free speech. I was wrong. I grew up believing we grew up in a place where our thoughts are our own. I was wrong. So some people are aware that they have been MK Ultra'd. I'm just going to use that for just to have a little bit of ease this morning because it's been going a little rough. Is somebody like Troy, not Troy, but the other one. Uh, Forgive me for blanking out, but Johnny, not Johnny Gosh. He was part of the Franklin scandal, which was also a group of mind-controlled children, and he was abducted. But the guy who gave the testimony, the deposition, oh, his name will come to me. In any event, when the Franklin scandal surfaced, which included Craig Spence. And by the way, I've been writing about Craig Spence as it pertains to Jeffrey Epstein on my Substack. So if you're on my Substack, just read that or reread it. Um, it was about a bunch of mind-controlled kids being made to do things. And I can't use the word that starts with an S and ends with an X, but were trained to do that at parties for officials and for high-ranking members of the government throughout the world. They were, taken to the White House. They were taken to parties. It was basically the home base was in Nebraska, Omaha, at Boys Town. There were three more prominent victims. And so it was Bonacci, Paul Bonacci. And some people pronounce it Bonacci. So when he decided to turn around and sue the other person that was heavily involved, who was Lawrence King, he took him into court like Virginia Giuffre has taken in the past, Prince Andrew to court and sued and actually won. He hasn't been paid, but he won he won $1 million. But he, during his deposition, talked about the fact that he was under MK Ultra mind control from the age of 3, and they turned him into an S slave. So some people, like him, know about that. Others, like myself, do not know that we're being programmed. So what does the television? I grew up a television kid, we used to be babysat by the television, television created many generations, and now that's been taken over by the gaming industry, that's been taken over by social media, but we're still inundated with what programming in the early days of television, and I want to give you another fact, the federal trade, the federal, the FCC, so the Federal Commission, whatever, figure it out. They're in charge of everything that goes over the airways. They're in charge of what your child sees, anything over the radio waves, they're in charge of. They get to say, this goes on, this doesn't. So the FCC is part of the government of the United States. And if the United States has a covert program like mind control, which again is a real thing, it's not a conspiracy, well, they're going to have the help of the FCC, aren't they? Right? And so it was called programming because basically that's what it is. You are programmed. So as a kid, I would watch cartoons, and I put up a Substack post for free talking about a couple of well-known singers and actresses like Marilyn Monroe, and even a cartoon like Betty Boop, an old-fashioned cartoon that was around, and then Jessica Rabbit, which maybe was what, 20, 15, 20 years ago. But to present day, we have people like Miley Cyrus. We have a whole bunch of people who are overtly sexualized, and they tend to wear animal prints. So the MK Ultra sort of, there is no other better word to say that the MK Ultra programming is, and again, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of sub programs. I use that MK moniker because it's just an umbrella term and it's easier to remember. The children are programmed on a massive scale, and somebody, let's say like Leslie Wexner, through his clothing company, and when he had a big scandal in 2008 that I have written about many times, and I'll just refer to it briefly right now, where he was trying to sell underwear and lingerie to 5-year-olds. To 5-year-olds. So if you don't think the clothing industry is also part of the programming, you're going to have to think again. Uh, they use all kinds of ways to indoctrinate young children, the younger the better, into becoming future or present, because children are also uh, abducted and put into situations where their only job is to please powerful individuals. We've heard about this time and time again. Entertainers fall into that, and that includes actors, actresses, and I'm using those old words for a purpose because it's not just men, it's not just boys, it's women, it's men, it's little girls, it's little boys, it's everyone. Um, so we have somebody like Nicki Minaj, Britney Spears, Miley Cyrus, Katy Perry, and you can always sort of tell because they are drawn to being very feline in their clothing, their tattoos, the accessories. They're very like their cat characteristics come out, and they wear things that are very tiger inspired or leopard print or cheetah patterns. So it's sort of like and if we look at some of the photos of Jeffrey Epstein's home, the interior of his home, he had leopard everywhere. He had tigers everywhere. I think a lot of you will remember the photograph of his maids sitting on and around the large stuffed tiger. That was a real tiger in his office. That was a taxidermy tiger in his office. But frankly, he had the taxidermy tigers in on Little St. James and in his other homes. Okay. Um, I've written about his friend, and I'll only use one of her. Well, I'll use her name, Morgan Fairchild. being a close friend of his from the time they were very young in my book, Epstein's Women. And perhaps I'll put up a chapter or two on my Substack to show you how she too is a product of MK Ultra mind control. Um, this happens whether you know it or not. It happens, like I said, some people know. Bonacci knew. Another person who knew he was being programmed was the photographer that took photographs uh, for Larry King and Craig Spence. I won't name him, but he was thrown into jail because he knew too much. And during the time that he was in jail, he was put under MK Ultra. Now, I know that all of Epstein's victims are MK Ultra. Even Epstein himself, I wrote a whole book on this called Creating Epstein, is MK Ultra. And again, I'm using that as a umbrella term. I never thought that I was MK Ultra. People would come to me and say, you're MK Ultra. You're the Monarch type. You're this, you're that. And you know what? As much research as I do and have done, and as much as I, even myself, know that I was Rickless's S slave for a number of 8 years, and I'm on Twitter almost every day talking about it ever since Epstein was arrested. So I've written a book, The Billionaire's Woman, but I've never ever sat down or had a thought that I was programmed. And the only time that this came to my attention is about, I would say, a week or so ago. I put up one of the many things that are done to me. So uh, there was a book left by my doorstep uh, with a Hello Kitty note on it. The note was another night, another dream, but always you. It was put on a book put out by ABC called Heat Wave, and ironically, Heat Wave is it's a fake book that was made for a soap opera, and I didn't know who had left me the book, and I called a couple of the people I knew. Hey, did you leave this book on my doorstep? And they didn't. And so, I read the words on the book jacket, which basically said, a New York real estate tycoon plunges to his death on a Manhattan sidewalk. A trophy wife with a past survives a narrow escape from a brazen attack. Mobsters and moguls, with no shortage of reasons to kill, trot out their alibis. Well, my God, that sounded just like my life. I'm in real estate. I've been a trophy wife. I have a past. I have survived escapes of brazen attacks by mobsters and moguls. So, I'm thinking, okay, this is very peculiar. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't even know what the words that were written on the thing left. The paper had the scent of a perfume. I could smell it. And it smelled just like the perfume Chloe. When the Ricklesses purchased E2 Holdings, I believe that was in 88. You would have to Google that because I can't remember exactly the year they purchased E2 Holdings. But E2 Holdings had the firm Elizabeth Arden. Maybe you're familiar with it. Very famous cosmetics store with a lot of products. Among the holdings of Elizabeth Arden were two perfumes. One of them was Chloe, which is the scent that was on the note, and the other one was Narcisse Noir. which is a very old, very uh, famous French perfume. He came over to my apartment after they closed on E2 Holdings, and he had access, obviously, to a ton of perfume. He wanted to know which of the two fragrances I liked. I smelled them both. I liked, the I didn't like Chloe so much. I liked Narcisse Noir, and so he gave me several of these. They come in an elegant black box in a tiny little bottle. Um, and at this point, they're collector's items. So it's funny because he said to me at the time, "Oh, well, my wife, and I won't name her, likes Chloe, and you like this." So he had a double life, obviously. Um, in any event, I smelled the Chloe. I knew it was Chloe. I was dating someone, and I said to him, "Hey, this is what's going on, but I only did this after this part. So let me give you this part first." So when it said another day, another dream, but always you, which was the second part of that message to me, I put those words into a Google search. And what did I find? I found that they're the words from a song, Another Night by Real McCoy. Now, here's the significance of that song. I used to listen to it every day. It's part of like this this thing I used to listen to, which had that song on it when I was on my treadmill every morning. And it terrified me because basically what it meant was that whoever left that note on my doorstep had somehow gotten into my apartment building, which is not easy to do, had not knocked on my door, had left that to let me know that they were close enough to hear what I was doing, to know what I was doing, when I was doing it, right? Um, so it was a warning. So at that point, I called the guy I was dating and I said, "Hey, I need to make sure that this is in fact Chloe." And he went to the Chloe main store at the time. I think it was on Fifth or Madison Avenue. I don't remember. And he got a sample of the perfume, and we put them next to each other. And I was right; it was Chloe. The other thing that I want to point out is that the firm Blackwater uses the image of Hello Kitty on that's their logo. Very peculiar. So in the beginning, I also found that there is a horrifying Hello Kitty murder that happened in Hong Kong. And I'm not going to get into it because it's terrifying. And I was frightened enough, and I want to get back to the MK situation. So if you want to look up the Hello Kitty murder in Hong Kong, I suggest you do that. It is a horrible true crime story. Perhaps one day I will do a podcast on it. So, that happened, but basically, I have had very unusual things happen to me uh, for a very, very long time. When I was recently working on another article for one of my newsletters, I came across additional information that I had not really found or seen anywhere, linking the Hello Kitty cartoon character to MK Ultra programming. And then I thought to myself, it kind of sent shivers up and down my spine because all of all of the words I had heard from different people. You are, a monarch. Monarchs are specifically trained satisfy very, very wealthy, very powerful people. And like there were different things, and I don't have any recollection of being trained anywhere. Like Bonacci does have a recollection of being taken to these bunkers, Air Force bunkers in particular, where he was trained. He was put under MK Ultra mind control training. He has a specific memory. It's also done in the jail. There are examples of people who have been MK Ultra training in jails. Charles Manson, Ted Kaczynski, um, even Whitey Bulger had this. I don't have any recollection of having active training, and so I tried to remember what happened to me as a child, because really, as a child is when you are created. So when I put up the information on Morgan Fairchild and her early years, you will see how she was created. Okay. But with me, I had to have been somehow subliminally created by our culture, by the culture of the Barbie doll. You know, that's what the perfect woman looks like by Mattel, by the culture of our cartoons. We have somebody like Jessica Rabbit, Betty Boop before that. We had Marilyn Monroe, our Hollywood icon. So I remember as a little girl, I don't, maybe I was 8. Yeah, I was very pretty, and I complained to my mother time and time again so much about all of the attention I was getting at school that she went to school to confront my teacher so that my teacher could put an end to the harassment that I was experiencing on a daily basis. To this day, the teacher's response, and remember, it's a public school, so the government has access to our public schools. That's why we don't know about MK Ultra, for example, when we're growing up. We do not know about the real Black history. We do not know about other things that happened, that because what we are told is one thing and the truth is something else that we discover if we're lucky enough. So the teacher's response to my mother was, she is a little princess. And as a little princess, she will just have to get used to it. My mother was a little surprised too. And by the way, I don't have the best mother in the world. Those of you who have read my memoir, The Billionaire's Woman, will understand why I say that. Nevertheless, my mother accepted that, and I had to then accept that I was a child, men were going to look at me in a different way. I would hear unusual things all the time. I would be propositioned, all kinds of things. Um, and so when I was going through my photos, I came across one that I'm wearing a leopard top holding a cat. And, I had a cat for 14 years when I lived in LA. And I lived in LA because I escaped after being held hostage and almost killed in my apartment in New York. And I'm wearing a leopard top. And I looked at myself holding the cat. And I know that I used to dress in such a way that always attracted men who were S addicts, right? Men who did not see who I was on the inside, but they only saw how I was on the outside. And then I noticed something else about me only after I saw that photograph. And it kind of triggered the way that I behaved. And it made me think, my God, maybe I was trained to become what I became, which I fought against, right? This is difficult for me, because I'm remembering as I am doing this podcast. I don't know how many people do that. All right, let me just keep going. So I know that for as long as I can remember, I can walk into a room and I can decide before I walk into that room, whether it's a restaurant or a party or a club or a meeting or I have an appointment to meet someone, I know that I can either turn it on and all eyes will be on me and I am the center of attention, or I can turn it off. And I remember once reading a biography of Marilyn Monroe, and she had this ability. And I believe that a lot of women who are listening to this today have this ability. And when I also read Virginia Giuffre's situation, I knew that she has this too, because she is very nice and sweet and kind and innocent looking and innocent sounding. And she could not have done all of the things that she was made to do by Epstein if she did not have the ability to turn it on. And that is what's required. You have to, I hate to use this because I never thought it would apply to me, but you have sort of like two personalities. You have a sort of like a normal, you can just throw on your jeans or your sweats and not be noticed situation, or you can just turn on the vamp in you and everyone notices you. Um, and so, you know, I know that um, I probably also, in a way that I was not aware, fought against this because I was always aware of the underdog. And so, let's say, for example, when Hurricane Katrina came around, I became involved. And I didn't become involved in a small way. I became involved in a very large way. I created a nonprofit organization, which I didn't really have time to like raise money for, so I never really finalized the documents. But I had volunteers across the country. The internet was, a place where we could all gather and find homes and resources for people. And I did that pro bono because I just wanted to help, right? And so I've done that, but I'm attracted to a big projects because I know that I can handle big projects. Well, that's not what I was like when I was a kid. I was very I was very shy. I was withdrawn. I think I was that because I attracted so much attention that I just drew into myself. But then later in life, I was that same thing, whatever it is, allowed me to take control of certain things that weren't just of the opposite sex, for example. So I could control things that were not just men, which is why I believe that some of Epstein's quote victims who remained and became part of our world, let's say, I hate to use names of the women in Epstein's world on this podcast, But I'm going to use one. Let's say like Nicole Junkerman, who has been embedded into our society, um, can become the head of a company like Carbine because she has that ability to split between which belongs to the same. I'm going to call it a superpower because I don't know what else to call it. So I'm going to have to become a cartoonish thing here to head be part of a large uh program, to feel comfortable in that role, not to be intimidated, and it's part of the same thing. So that's why we have her and we have other people that are embedded into political roles. We have another woman, Melanie Walker, became involved with Bill Gates, who also became involved with the World Bank. And and we have somebody like Eva Anderson, who Virginia Giuffre alleges Epstein purchased her medical degree, and she went on to become a doctor, and I'm using that in quotes. So we have women who were, quote, empowered to continue to be embedded into our society. And you know what? And this is really a subject for another day, but they're embedded into our society to keep this thing going, this thing of controlling the masses, right? Because from the beginning of time, this is not new. From the beginning of time, we have only two different types of people. We have slaves or we have masters. We have slaves or masters. That's all we've had. And that's where we're at today. Nothing has changed. The only way that we're going to change anything is by learning as much as we can learn. Because, I'll be honest, when I first heard about Kathy O'Brien and when I first heard about the other woman who used a different name for her book, who was a plaything for Bob Hope. And again, I don't know why I didn't make notes for this, and it's really early. I'm trying to remember her name. She just passed away recently. She wrote Thanks for the Memories. And Bob Hope was her handler, and she was a S slave as well. When I heard about her and Kathy O'Brien, I have to admit I was skeptical. When I hear from people on Twitter tell me that they are experiencing X, Y, and Z, even though I know that it's a historical fact that MK Ultra is a real thing, I'm a little skeptical. But you know what? I'm giving you my experience. I've never shared this with anyone because it didn't occur to me until I saw myself in the cat leopard thing, and I know I have had this kind of history with clothing and what I wear and how I look and all of that and that I've fought against it by trying to become connected to good causes and to helping people, and sharing my research and my life with you, but I never thought I would be sharing this with you. Okay. In any event, I want to thank you for taking a listen. This has not been an easy one for me. So like the video, please. All right. Talk later. Bye.